Hi, this is Ann with Fiber Designs by Ann, and today I'm going to show you how to make a simple white fabric flower without using white paint. The things you'll need for this project is a surface that can get wet and paint on it. We're not using paint, but that is protected. I will be using white fabric, and it depends on how wide you want your flowers. This is about 2 inches by about 13, and how many flowers you want. We'll need a little bit of water, a paintbrush. I like one that's soppy, that this nice round works. A little bit of painter's tape is optional, and then I'll be using the Caran Neocolor II wax pastels. So to get started, I'm going to lay my fabric on my surface, and I'm going to tape it. It may not hold because it's a little shiny and the tape doesn't want to stick, and then when it gets wet it'll come off anyway, but that's okay. I'm going to lay it on there and realize that anything under here, like this is a little textured, this little plastic I have, and that may show through, but with this technique it's fine. It'll just add more texture perhaps, and that's good. Then I'm going to select a color, and I like this orangish color, and this will be the center of the flower. It could be any color, it could be black. And I'm going to lightly, about a 1/4 inch up from one of the edges. This had another color on it, so I'm going to wipe it on something else here first. And again, it's no big matter. This is nature, and there's all kinds of things in nature. I'm going to just slide my pastel across the fabric lightly, not too firm, just so it does sort of a little dusting of the color. And I'm going to go back the other direction, and you can make this as wide as you want. I like the design that happens when it's just a little ways onto the center, what will be the center of the flower. It's very, very soft, very light. Now watch when the water hits it. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to get it very wet, and I'm going to dab along the color. And I'm going to start in the center, but that's doesn't really matter where you begin. And I'm going to just lay my paintbrush with the water so that it makes a little mound or a little peak. And you can see that the color is brightening up. And the line of water will carry out, this is dry fabric, so the line of water will carry out into the weave just until it's done spreading. And that's all fine for these flowers, this technique. You can see how the color is brightened. And I'll just watch it for a little bit, decide if I want a little more water somewhere. The other thing I can do is come back with the same pastel, or perhaps another one, a different color, and just drag it a little more. I want a little brighter color. And then I'm taking my brush, now I haven't dipped it in water again this time, I'm going to just gently brush where the second drag of that wax pastel made sort of a line, so I'm just going to gently rub it with my paintbrush, sort of to smooth it out a little, blend it a little more. And I'm going to just let it go. If you want, you can tilt this, or you can stand it clear on end to encourage it to flow, for the water to flow, but it will stop probably before the halfway point, depending on how much water you put on it. More water will dilute it and make it softer in color. But I'm going to stop right now and just let it finish its little moving, and then let it dry completely, and we'll come back and I'll show you the next step for making these simple flowers. Okay, my fabric is pretty much dry, and what you'll need for the next part of these flowers is a piece of fusible, and I also use some parchment paper. And I'm going to remove the painting surface, and I'm on a makeshift ironing board right now. And I'm going to put the piece inside the parchment paper. I set the fusible aside, set the painted piece, I'll keep calling it a painted piece even though it's wax pastel, inside this parchment paper. My iron is set to a cotton setting, and this is to remove, wouldn't have to do this, this piece will not be laundered. This is to remove any wax that may not have gotten completely set. Nothing came off in here, so that's a pretty good sign that it's all good. So, and now it's really completely dry. So I'll move the parchment paper away. Actually, I'm going to use that parchment paper yet again. So I want to decide which side. Sometimes the back side's as good as the front, but on this one, this is definitely the side I want for the top. So I'm going to flip it so that the top side is down. And I'm going to take my piece of fusible, which is just slightly larger than the cut strip of fabric. Make sure you have the slippery side up towards your iron, but we're using the parchment, so that will help. And I'm going to put the rough side or the adhesive side down and drop the other piece of parchment over the top. Make sure my iron's hot. And just for a few seconds, I will go across the fabric with the fusible. And I might just lift this and check to see it's pretty well fused. And let that cool. And I'm going to move my iron out of the way. Don't set anything like that hot onto your, I have a cutting surface under here, cutting mat. You don't want to put anything hot on that because that will melt your mat. So I'll move these out of the way. As I have petals everywhere because I've been making these. And I will take the parchment, also known as release paper. You want to make sure that if you did what I just did, which was to press it down on there, make sure there's no residue on here, because if you grab this and use it on something else and find out there's sticky on it, adhesive on it, that's kind of a bummer. So now I have my piece, and I can see that my fusible might be a little bit old. It's leaving a little bit of bumps, but that's not going to matter in the end. So I'm going to take, you can use scissors, but I have a rotary cutter, and I'm going to just cut right along. I'm using my paper rotary cutter. I don't use this, it's really for paper. I don't use it necessarily on fabric. It's too dull, but using it, and I'm just cutting away the excess fusible around the edges so that I will only have fused fabric and nothing extra. Then I'll take this and I'll kind of bend it or crack it so that the fusible comes away from one of the edges. Now, if you have an older mat, or a mat you don't care about, I'll use this one, you can cut these with your rotary cutter. I also really like to use curved scissors, and I usually do that. I just feel more in control, but we'll just do it with the rotary cutter first. And decide how wide you want your petal, and I'm going to just randomly decide. And you can use that, if you know that's what you want, you can use that to make all the other ones, and you just cut them out and cut a bunch of these strips. So it's kind of a neat thing. You can sit down and do that, just relaxing sometime. Or you can just start while you're here. And I go look at the middle point on one edge and the middle point on the top. And I'll just go cut, cut, cut. And if I get too much of a straight edge here, I'll just do it again. And then I will flip it around. And I will do it again. Sometimes there's enough left from these little pieces that you can make another little bit of a flower, a small flower. And that's one petal. This one I'll do with my scissors. I look at the center point, and that's about where I start. And I come up and try to go to the center. This is if I want a pointed shape. You can certainly round them, do it any other shape that you want. And I'll do the same thing here and go back to the point. And I'm going to just eyeball these because they don't have to be perfect. If they're blowing in the wind, they're not going to be perfect. Perfect. And let me put this on something light so that you can see it better. Hopefully the camera doesn't mind that bright light. And you can see the petals starting to form a center on the flower. We'll cut a couple more out. And you can add as many or as few petals as you want. You can put leaves in the areas where you don't have a petal. You can have the petals overlapping. One other thing that I'll show you, I cut a couple more here. I like to cut just a whole bunch of the strips and then just sit down and listen to something, or if somebody's watching something, hang out with them and just sort of have some handwork to do. And this is really simple. After you get all your petals cut out, feel like you've really achieved something. Now the other thing I was going to show you is if I want to cut this very point with a tiny bit of a curve, and I'll show you this on the other finished piece, then I can put my petals together so that they make a little circle in the center that is not filled with the points of the petals. You can see the difference there. And I'll show you one reason I do that. Looking on the finished piece here, all this stuff out of the way, I have two ideas, and I'm sure you can come up with more. One of the things I'd like to do are take my coils that are fabric coils that I've made, and I have videos. I'll try to link to that in the description. And they can be put on in the center of one of the flowers that's cut round. You could put them on the pointy ones as well, but they fit kind of nicely on the round ones. And then you could come up in the center and tie it on with a French knot or some embroidery stitches. The other pieces that just come to a point, I think French knots or other embroidery stitches are nice there. You could also go ahead and cut a little piece of your extra fabric into a circle and place that on the center of these flowers. Once my petals are all cut out, I'll find my background fabric. This is just a scrap that I'm going to use, and I'm going to put it, get these petals, on my parchment because the scrap is actually has fusible on the back of it. So I'll set them onto my background. You want to make sure you have the fusible side down, otherwise you'll end up with a flower petal on your iron, except you won't, because I'm going to highly recommend and suggest that you use the parchment, the release paper again. That way if one is not, it has the fusible up, it will stick onto your parchment rather than onto your iron. And I'm not loving the way these are. I'm going to shift them a little bit. And I would probably do another petal on this, but I like the way that's looking right now. And then I'll put the parchment on it. Turn my iron back up to nice and hot. Bring up my ironing surface again. Give that a little, let's just see if I got all those petals going the right way. Yay, I did. So I'll do that just a little bit better. Okay. And that's just how simple it is to make white flowers with a little colorful center. I'll show some projects in the future using these flowers, and I'll show you also how to paint some other flowers, flower petals, using these same wax pastels. I hope you'll leave a comment or a question if you'd like. This is Anne with Fiber Designs by Anne. Thanks for watching.